Good evening. I'm Martijn Andrea, and today I chair the Planning Committee, which consists of 9 elected borough councillors, supported by a range of professional officers. It is the committee's responsibility to determine a planning application using current national and local planning policies and other relevant planning considerations. Firstly, the planning officer will present the application, and then only those speakers who have been registered to speak will be invited to address the committee with a strict time limit of 3 minutes. Once the presentations have been made, the committee will discuss and debate the application, seeking clarification from the council's professional planning officers where necessary. We can only focus on the proposals before us and only take into account what are considered material planning considerations. We welcome members from the public to attend these meetings. I would like to point out that members of the public, either supporters or objectors to the application, are not permitted to address the committee outside of the allocated public speaking section for each item, or to ask questions, interject, or clap during the meeting. Planning proposals can often generate strong opinions both for and against the development, but committee business needs to be conducted in a professional and orderly manner without interruption from the public gallery. As a chair, if there is a disturbance from the public gallery in accordance with point 5.25 of the Council's Constitution, I have the discretion to, if needed, to take a number of steps, included but not limited to removing individuals from the meeting and clear parts of the gallery. Thank you.
Apologies have been received from Councillors Mike Smith, Caroline Smith and Catherine Glover.
The minutes of the previous meeting. Do we all agree to the minutes of the previous meeting? Can I have a raise of hands if possible? Thank you. Are there any declaration of interests on these sections? Moses.
Yes, Chair, I need to declare my interest in agenda item 21 and 22. I sit on the Early Town Council Planning Committee, and I've had to look at this application before, but I'm going to remain open-minded in case there's any new evidence. I decide which way I vote. I've been told that the right legal advice is to abstain and not take part in the debate for these two applications. So I will leave the room.
Okay.
To be clear, the advice is, just bear with me 2 seconds, because so my understanding, Councillor, is you've taken part in the it would be the Early Town Council Planning Committee when those 2 items were brought before them. There's a relevant part of the Council's constitution in the Planning Committee Councillor guidelines on good practice, in particular paragraph. In paragraph comes under 8 from recollection. Page 163, I'm being prompted, but the relevant bit is it says, do consider yourself able to take part in the debate on a proposal where you are also a member of the parish or town council, provided the proposal does not substantially affect the well-being or financial standing of the consultee body. I'm not suggesting it does here, but more importantly, part B, you make it clear to the consultee body that your views are expressed on the limited information before you only. You must reserve judgment and the independence to make up your mind on each separate proposal based on your overriding duty to the whole community, not just to the people in that area, ward or parish, as and when it comes before the committee and you hear all the relevant information. And you will not in any way commit yourself as to how you or others may vote when the proposal comes before the committee, and you disclose the personal interest regarding your membership or role when the committee comes to consider the proposal. So essentially, you have to have made that declaration at that planning committee of the town council. If you haven't made that declaration at that town council meeting, and I would strongly advise for future reference that you have it minuted as well for the avoidance of any doubt or argument, then if you don't do that, then my advice is that you would not take part in the item when it comes to this committee, as to do otherwise would be in breach of Wokingham Borough Council's constitution, which would A, put any decision at risk, and B, put you at risk of complaint. So if you haven't made that declaration, my advice is to not to take part in that item at all and remove yourself from the room during those two items. If you have made that declaration during that meeting, then you should be okay to sit. Obviously, if it's not been minuted as part of that town council, it does open up the risk, but that's not my decision to make on that point.
Okay, I will leave the room. Makes my life easier.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Moses. Any applications to be deferred and withdrawn items? No. Then we move to item number 20, which is application number 251482, 9 Sevenoaks. I think
Hello, everybody. This is for item 20, application 251482, 9 Sevenoaks Road in Early. Oh, apologies. So I forgot to share. Can everyone see that now? Okay, perfect. Yeah, good evening, everybody. This application is 251482, 9 Sevenoaks Road in Early. It is a two-storey semi-detached dwelling within settlement. The permission is sought for the erection of a dual-pitch roof front porch, access front to the front door, single-storey side extension, part flat roof, part monopitch roof, single-storey rear extension, formation of a block paving driveway, a new drop curb, demolition of the existing garage and chimney back, and associated landscaping and boundary treatments. So here's the aerial photo and photo of the front and to the rear of the site. In terms of the care arrangement, proposed extensions and internal alterations are intended to accommodate vulnerable residents within the borough who are cared for by WBC's adult services. The staff to client ratio will typically involve 1 or 2 staff members for 3 clients over a 24-hour time period. The proposed use of the property involves the accommodation of 3 residents living together as a single household, with care provided on site by the registered support provider Optales. The use does not constitute a care home, nor does the scale of use represent a house in multiple occupation or a care home, and remains a C3 dwelling, given it's within use class 3 C3B of the Town and Country Planning Act. Therefore, the term can be considered under this household application. The proposal complies with policy CP2, given the scheme includes additions and alterations to make the existing dwelling suitable for a mix of vulnerable adults. In relation to parking for residents and staff, it is envisaged that there will be parking spaces used by both residents if they have access to their own adopted vehicle as well as staff. The disabled access ramp to the front is a minor addition which would not harm the street scene. The new Pemble block paving offers improvements to the previous concrete surface and would not harm the street scene. The single-storey side and rear extension as well as the front porch are minor additions of subservient features to the main dwelling, and all would comply with the Borough Design Guide. The patio would not be visible from the public realm, thus no harm, and the new 1.8 metre closed board fencing can be covered under permitted development and does not require planning permission. In relation to neighbouring amenities, as part of the rear extension, the double doors and windows would overlook onto the garden and have a similar outlook to the existing. Such will be screened by the fencing along the side boundaries. In terms of loss of light, the rear extension is set off from number 2's boundary by 2.65 metres, and given such separation distance, there's no loss of light concern. Given the rear extension would marginally project forwards number 11's rear extension building line, there are also no concerns. In terms of overbearing, given the extension is only single storey, it does not introduce an excessive height, depth or bulk that would dominate neighbouring outlooks, thus not considered to be overbearing. In conclusion, the proposal is not considered to harm the character area nor neighbouring amenities. The proposal complies with CP1, CP2 and CP3 as well as the Borough Design Guide. Highways has raised no objections subject to conditions. Therefore, the application is recommended for conditional approval. Any questions?
Thank you, Cameron. Any questions?
Just an observation. I can't remember this application coming before Early Town Council Planning Committee. If it did, it's probably the one I missed. But because it's coming from Early Town Council, I think I'll have to remove myself from the room. Yeah? It wasn't, it's all right. So,
Sorry, I was only going to say, this is only in front of us is because it's a WBC. So, I mean, this is a straightforward application as far as I'm concerned.
Same here. I just wanted to ask, one of the residents online put a query, and I think I know the answer, but I just want to double check. She said that the demolition of the garage and the side extension will probably mean that there's space on the drive for only one vehicle. And she said that was probably a bit short, but my understanding, because of the dropped curve.
Yes, there will be 2 drop curbs now, which allows two car parking spaces. There will be a car parking space, then the ramp, and then another car parking space. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think looking at this application, it looks quite straightforward. I think I think it complies with CP1, 2 and 3. I think it's within the design guidelines, I think, for the borough, so I think it's still in keeping with our design principles. So I'd be for this, and I think looking to approve this.
Thank
you. Sorry, you are James, aren't you? Cameron. Yeah, no, it's quite clear that there's parking spaces. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
There's a second dropped curve, so that was clear. Yeah, I just wanted to make that clear. Okay, no more questions. Do we have a proposal for recommendation of support of the officers? Sam, yeah. Do we have a seconder? Carol?
Chair, sorry, good evening. It's Brian Conlon. Just to let you know, you need to, I think is there any speakers or is there not?
No speakers for this one, Brian.
There's no speakers. That's fine. It wasn't clear. Sorry, it went straight to debate. So obviously on the video, it goes straight to debate. Thank you.
Thanks. Good to have you online, Brian, and keeping an eye on us. Can we have a vote? Thank you. That is unanimous. Okay, we can't ask Moses back because he's still out for the second one.
I think he's gone home.
Yeah. Just for approving the minutes. Okay, so now we're going to the second application, which is application number 251346. This is site 20 Culver Lane in Early. Tarek, you will give a presentation? Yeah. And then I have Mr. Marsh, at least.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. This presentation will address two separate household applications at 20 Culver Lane in Early Wokingham, so both items 21 and 22. The applications seek part retrospective permission for the erection of two outbuildings, one to be used as a gym and home office, the other to be used as a garage. Here's an aerial and block plan of the application site, which is located at the junction of Culver Lane and East Court Avenue. With respect to the main outbuilding, here's somewhat of a traffic light illustration showing the front elevation. The image outlined in green shows the structure that already benefits from planning permission. The image in red shows the structure that was previously refused, and the image in yellow shows the outbuilding structure now being proposed. Regarding the garage structure, again, the green outline indicates the structure that already has planning permission. The image in red marks the structure that was previously refused, and the yellow represents the outbuilding now up for consideration, which all highlight the modest changes proposed. Here are two block plans of the application site. The block plan to the left shows the structures that already have approval granted, while the block plan to the right shows the proposed structures. As you can see, the new footprint and built form are very similar to what has already been approved. Just to clarify that, just to show on my cursor, this is a veranda structure, so it's not additional footprint because it's an open structure. Overall, subject to conditions, the proposed developments are considered acceptable in all respects and comply with national and local policy as a whole. Just to reaffirm, these are two separate applications. Therefore, members will need to make separate recommendations for each application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tarek. Can I now ask Mr. Marsh to give... You've got 3 minutes, Mr. Marsh.
Good evening. I was the chair of the Local Residents Association at the time the construction of this outbuilding was underway. Several residents from Culver Lane and East Court Avenue got in touch with me and asked, what is going on? How can the council allow it to be built? Why is it allowed to be built so high? It looks terrible. Now, there's only one reason giving rise to such comments, and that it is not in keeping and out of place at that location. Now, outbuildings are typically 2.5 metres tall with flat roofs. The outbuilding that was approved also had walls 2.5 metres tall, but with a pitched roof, bringing the building height up to 4.3 metres. What was actually built were walls 2.7 metres high, on top of which was a pitched roof, bringing the total height up to 5.3 metres, in other words, 1 metre taller than approved. At this point, retrospective application 250666 was submitted. This was comprehensively refused, the officer quoting non-compliance with guidance and several policies, including policy CP3 concerning mass, build form, height and non-compliance with the character of the area. You are now being asked to approve the same building in the same location. So what's changed? The only difference on site between that time and now is that the outbuildings have been painted battleship grey, which emphasises the difference between the outbuildings and the brick and rendered hip end properties typical of the area. The drawing has been corrected, the height is now 5.3 metres. We have some queries with the Planning Officer report on page 37. Paragraph 10 claims compliance with policy CP1. We don't understand how it possibly can be compliant as all soft landscaping has been removed. Paragraph 11 claims compliance with policy CP3. There is no comprehensive justification for compliance since the refusal of the previous application when policy CP3 was given as the main reason for refusal. Now, residential suburban homes have the benefit of gardens and greenery. Development of this densely built, treeless back garden by adding an exceptionally large outbuilding as tall as the neighbouring house degrades the suburban amenity of the property to that of an inner city dwelling as well as degrading the amenity of neighbouring gardens which are impacted by this application. Policy CP3 states permission will be granted for proposals that are of an appropriate scale, mass, build form, height and character to the area. Clearly, this building under consideration does not comply with this policy, and we therefore request you refuse this application. Please remember the residents' reactions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marsh. Councillor Stephen Newton speaking, but he's not here. So is he online? Oh, sorry, apologies. Yeah, he's online.
Can I speak, Chair?
Yeah,
thank you, Chair.
You got
Can you
3
hear me
minutes.
okay? Okay, thank you. The applicant has persistently built something in contravention of the planning guidance and the approval given. I feel that this has disrespected the process, council officers and the neighbours. This development was originally rejected individually and cumulatively because the proposed outbuildings would, by reason of their excessive scale, height, massing and inappropriate siting forward of the established building line along East Court Avenue, result in overly dominant, incongruous and visually intrusive form of development. From many locations along East Court Avenue, the proposed outbuildings would read as one continuous form of development forward of the established building line that would significantly detract from the visual amenity of the character and appearance, pattern of development and spatial qualities of the immediate vicinity. This is contrary to policies CP1 and CP3 of the core strategy, section 12 of the National Planning Policy Framework, the National Design Guide and section 4 of the Borough Design Guide supplementary planning document. Hardly anything has changed with these new applications. It is still overly dominant, incongruous and a visually intrusive form of development. From many locations along East Court Avenue, the proposed outbuildings would read as one continuous form of development forward of the established building line that would significantly detract from the visual amenity of the character and appearance, pattern of development and spatial qualities of the immediate vicinity, contrary to policies CP1 and CP3 of the core strategy, section 12 of the National Planning Policy Framework, the National Design Guide and section 4 of the Borough Design Guide supplementary planning document. I ask the committee to reject these new applications, but if the committee is minded to approve these developments, can you please impose the following conditions? The premises in its entirety cannot be used for any type of commercial activity at any time. The premises must not be sold or rented out as separate units. It must remain as a single premises encompassing the main house and the outbuildings. The premises in its entirety can only be used by a single family unit and family members staying with them and not be subject to any payment or in-kind arrangements. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay.
Can I start?
Wayne, go ahead.
Yeah, so sorry, page 36, Tarek. The proposed height, the height of the approved under 232494, that's 4.3, but the actual, I can't read what it says on the proposed outbuilding. What's that figure? The height figure, sorry.
5.3 metres proposed.
5.3. So, permitted development as an ancillary building, they could build 4.
Yeah, as under Class C.
Yes.
Yeah. But it was approved as a planning permission,
Planning
not
permission.
under. Yeah, it wasn't under PD.
And what's the massing effect of what was approved versus this new development? I can appreciate that it's gone up a metre, but what's the overall massing difference, the overall volume difference, increase?
Don't have that calculation off the top of my head, but it was just the height increase, that increased by 1 metre high.
Okay, can I carry on? Mr. Marsh referred to page 37, 10 and 11, CP1, and he made points related to the previous application that was refused, where these two were prominent reasons for refusal. Could you offer your new assessment based on CP1 and CP3?
Yeah, sure. So with respect to the previously refused scheme, the omission of the main principal reason is the omission of the carport structure, when considered together with both outbuildings, there was a continuous built form present from East Heath Avenue. So the main change is that they've removed the carport structure. So while this seems like a minor, small amendment, it is important to clarify that the previous carport was a significantly sized structure. It was around almost double the size of the main outbuilding. So its removal now means that the outbuilding is set generously away from the side boundary, around 5.9 meters. There'll be clear separation between both outbuildings, so the garage and the main outbuilding, especially at first floor level, so it would appear as a subservient addition. And overall, it wouldn't appear as a dominant and intrusive or incognito structure within the street scene now, based on that main amendment. So the key change and key difference between the previously refused application and this one before you today is the removal of the carport.
Okay, I have a bit of the same observation as Wayne. My understanding is that the acceptability of the approved application relied on limited scale, modest height, and clear separation between buildings and the site boundaries, which help preserve the openness of the character of the site. So, by removing the carpool, they've addressed one of those issues, which is the clear separation between the buildings. I agree with that one. But in the refused application, it says excessive height and scale of the built form, particularly where it exceeds the southwestern boundary fence and extends towards the footway, introduces an imposing presence that undermines the sense of openness typically associated with a corner plot dwelling. And this effect is compounded by the limited separation with the highway, and also the visual impact is accentuated by the elevated ground levels along East Court Avenue. So if I see the three parts that were part that we approved, it was the limited scale, the modest height, and clear separation. Only the clear separation has been addressed, and I suppose the other two are still not fully addressed by the new proposal compared to the rejected and approved approach.
Yeah, so with respect to the main outbuilding, the removal of the carport, which was directly adjacent to the fencing, that's been removed now. So the main outbuilding is now 5.9 meters away. So again, it's only increased by 1 meter in height. So that's a modest change from what's already been approved effectively. So those are the main reasons why it's acceptable in that regard.
Yeah, in view of the elevation, East Court Avenue, as we know, is rising up. So any views from Culver Lane, anything built at that higher level at the back of the garden is going to be more visible, and this is even higher. So I'm concerned about that visual amenity that was a concern before. Is there any proposal for landscaping or anything that will actually mitigate that view, view from the bottom, from the Culver Lane?
Yes, I can confirm that. Condition 3 of item 22, which is the garage, there is a scheme for soft landscaping that will need to be submitted within 3 months of any approval. And that could be in the form of hedgerow along the side boundary, a series of small trees, shrub, which would improve the visual amenity of the area and screen or partly screen the garage structure and the main outbuilding from especially East Court Avenue, so the public realm in general.
Yes, I saw that on item 22, but it's not shown on this item that we're looking at, item 21. And if we're going to be making a decision on this as we see it, I think some sort of landscaping should be shown. And does it not continue right the way up? And what's it going to be apart from fluffy bushes at the moment?
Yeah, so those details will be confirmed later by our trees and landscape officer. So the agent or applicant will need to submit a scheme of landscaping. It could be in the form of hedgerows, small trees, and then our trees and landscape officer will review it and deem it inappropriate or acceptable, and then we can sort additional amendments there to ensure that improves the visual amenity of the area effectively.
And sorry to come back. Would that include a care plan for any landscaping?
No, just the scheme of landscaping, so just a plan showing the site plan effectively showing the type of vegetation, species, sizes that will be proposed within the rear garden area, specifically along the southwestern boundary along East Court Avenue.
Sam, go ahead.
Thank you. No, I think I'm familiar with Culver Lane. I think it's quite a well-known road of sort of there's lots of extensions going on that road, right? And a lot of people sort of maxing out houses, a lot of big families who live there. I mean, is there, just in terms of history of, I've seen, the street scene, and there's definitely a lot of houses on the front side that you could tell have had a lot of work done and expanded in size and mass. Do the officers have details of other outbuildings that have sort of been approved on the same road?
No details at this stage. I know there's an outbuilding adjacent across the road. So from the southwestern side of the application site, there's a small outbuilding, but that was approved, say, more than 10 years ago, and it's just a small detached garage structure. But there's no other examples of similar outbuildings to what's being proposed under this one.
Wayne, go ahead.
I'll be slightly controversial. If you look at page 51 and you look at the house, you would almost think that's a completely separate house with its own drive, because you've got the entrance. I mean, if it's ancillary to the main house, why do we need a double garage, a double gated entrance off of East Court Avenue? I don't get it. I mean, it should all be coming in through the front. To me, it looks like that's, well, you can put whatever condition you like in, but it looks to me like a completely separate dwelling with its own garage and everything what you would want as a separate dwelling. I mean, yes, you've got the word ancillary, but...
So just to clarify, the garage door is facing the house, so the applicant could utilize the garage by accessing the front driveway, driving down the side of the house. That's the only means for them to park inside the garage. They can't possibly use the rear doors to the side of East Court Avenue in that regard.
Yeah. In all honesty, I wouldn't disagree with you, but you can easily change things around, so you could. But why do they need that access down there? I don't get it. Because if this is going to be ancillary, I could understand it if it's a completely separate, self-contained premise where people want their own access. But if it's ancillary, why can't they use the access from Culver Lane?
Yeah, the applicant or the homeowner is at their discretion to have gates on the side. Those were there prior to the submission of this application. But there is no evidence to suggest that this would be used as a separate accommodation. There is an appropriate condition attached to both outbuildings that require that they're not sublet and that they're ancillary to the main dwelling, not rented. Again, this application came from our enforcement team, so our enforcement team is actively monitoring the site. I know there's quite a few local residents that are intrigued and they're actively aware of the scheme and aware of the site. So if there's any indication that it is used as a self-contained dwelling, then again, our enforcement team will take appropriate action.
Any more clarification questions at this stage? So the officer's recommendation is that but the removal of the car pool makes this more acceptable than the rejected case. Is everybody comfortable with that one?
I wouldn't use the word comfortable.
aligned with that one. I still feel that going from 1 meter higher, it has increased, you know, the appearance a lot. I mean, you know, if you see what was approved versus what was rejected, yeah, we're not even halfway. Yeah, we're very close to the one in size and build to the one was rejected, and that is, I know the applicant is not here to explain reasons, but I mean, for me, that is a bit of a concern. Yeah, it's, I mean, if it was sort of maybe halfway or a little bit higher or this, but the one that was rejected was 5.5 meters. The one that was approved was 4.3. Now we're at 5.3. Yeah, I mean, that is a signal. Okay, sorry. Brian, please go on.
No, that's absolutely fine, Chair. Sorry, I just thought I may assist with the sort of the line of debate at the moment. The obviously focus the committee are rightly focusing on the applications that were refused. Tarek's obviously set out the reasons why those applications were refused, and obviously the physical differences, which is mainly surrounding the removal of the carport between what was refused and what we have in front of us now. Members should also be aware of what was approved before the refusal, and obviously the key question here is the difference, not necessarily in what was refused, because there is physical changes to the scheme, and whilst there's sort of three key areas, as you say, the separation, the height, and the scale, cumulatively the harm in any proposal needs to be sufficient enough that the local authority can refuse and defend that refusal reason. And obviously the magnitude of harm caused by the addition of the carport, alongside the height, alongside any other changes, was what made the refuse scheme unacceptable. Removing a single element of that doesn't necessarily leave other elements as harmful, because all three aspects you talked about, separation, height, and scale, they all link to each other. It may be that yes, it is high and yes, it can be seen, but it is not now, as Tarek mentioned and rightly said, it's not as close to the boundary. There isn't as much scale in the building that's being put forward in front of you. Then, as I say, returning to what was already approved, and the illustrations within your agenda show what the council to deem acceptable, which in effect is almost 90% of the building you see in front of you. So ultimately the committee is only considering that additional from what is approved. And is that additional height, 1 meter, slight change in dimensions, is that change in dimensions, whether it's visually or volumetrically, is that sufficiently harmful for the council to defend and appeal? And obviously the recommendation in front of you is for approval, which shows you that officers are not confident that refusing the change in dimensions from what's approved it is able to be presented to you as defendable.
Thank you, Brian. Sam.
One of the things I think was discussed was around sort of hedgerows. Could that be mandated for to be sort of appropriate hedgerows or landscaping done for this application to go ahead?
Yeah, so it could include hedgerow along the sign boundary, a series of small trees. Those details can be confirmed in the event of any approval by our trees and landscape officer, who can clarify the right species, correct plant size, etc. So again, to improve the visual amenity of the whole area.
Thank you.
I get what Brian was saying, but I think there's two different things. The carport for me is massing. The building is bulk and scale. And that would have a dominant effect on the street scene, and it's not a dwelling. So it's an outbuilding, so is reported in the pack, but on the street scene, 5.3 is big enough for well, it's more than big enough for a bungalow. So it's in theory not an outbuilding. That's why it's here tonight, because the whole purpose of permitted development at 4 metres was to try and keep structures low enough that they weren't dominant. This is obviously very dominant, would be very dominant at 5.3. I get what Brian's saying. It's, you know, I mean, we have this dreadful thing at planning committee all the time where we keep worrying about what's going to happen if it gets refused. Could we defend it? Of which we must be very conscious, but equally, it will be, and we've got another one coming up straight after this, it will be a dominant feature in the garden. Don't matter how much hedgerow you put along there. I mean, because most of the hedgerow has been lost in Culver Lane, but it would be very dominant.
Chair, if you don't mind me coming back on that point, I agree, Wayne. That is ultimately the question committee must consider. I think one thing to bear in mind is that dominant feature in the garden, that large outbuilding, is the harm caused by that building being in the garden behind the fence with a pitch roof. How many metres from the boundary tag? Was it 5.6?
5.9.
5.9 metres from the boundary in isolation. Is that building sufficiently harmful on the character of the area when you're standing 30, 40 metres up the street either way, 50 metres up the street the other way, when you're walking past or you're driving for a very short duration? Will fundamentally that street have changed character? If you know, we've already got an approval, which we may well have seen if it was built out in accordance with the original approved plans at 4.3, I believe. So yes, there's a metre difference, but ultimately, you know, we need to demonstrate that there will be harm.
Stuart, go ahead.
Yeah, surely the question is, if 4.3 is okay and 5.5 isn't, then why is 5.3 okay in height? Surely that is the crux of the answer. Why is it? Why would we approve something more than 4.3?
If I may come back, Stuart, sorry on that quickly. There is no mandated height. There isn't a prescriptive policy which says buildings can only be up to a certain height. Every site is different. Every site has more or less screening than the next. Every building is used in a different way. The use of the building as ancillary, you know, they come in all shapes and sizes. We've talked about flat roofs. We've talked about what can be done under permitted development up to 4 metres in many cases if it's off the boundary. But I guess the point is, what is the harm of that extra metre? And that is what any subsequent scrutiny of this decision will focus on. Yes, 4.3 and 5.3 are 1 metre materially different, but what is the harm caused by that 1 metre? There isn't a policy we can rely on to say all of a sudden a 4.3 metre to a 4.4 to 4.5 becomes unacceptable numerically. It is only materially when we make that assessment. Thank you.
All right, could I just ask a question? When you were referring to 5.9 metres from the boundary, that's from East Court Avenue.
Yeah, East Court Avenue, yeah.
Yeah, so but from the first property in East Court Avenue, it abuts the boundary line, doesn't it? So it's
yeah, number 1 to the rear of the outbuilding.
So it's a shame they haven't, it's a shame they didn't bring it in 5 metres and then somebody could plant a decent hedgerow along there and along the side rather than abutting it right next to that. Because when you look at it on a street scene, I'll go back to this, it almost looks like a completely separate dwelling, but could be number 1, well, not number 1 because you already got number 1 East Court Avenue, but you can see what I mean. You've pushed it right up against the boundary line. See what I mean? Just put it there.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I also have some concerns about this one. I think some of the reasons it was, you know, we're looking at what was proposed, what was supported and what was rejected. I mean, for me, if I look at the photos, it would still appear overly dominant and visually intrusive, failing to respect the established character of the area. I mean, I still feel like it would conflict with principles of good design, particularly in relation to scale and massing, and the relationship of built form to its surroundings, but I don't know what other people think of that one.
It is very dominant. It is, in all intents and purposes, another building that would be big enough for a house. You can't take that away, but I take on board what Brian is telling us. But it is very, very difficult. You're looking at it here. It is very big and it's dominant. I mean, I get what you say, Brian, about, well, will it ultimately affect the street scene being 5.9 metres away? Yes, I get that, but it will affect the street scene from a point of view of the way that it's been sandwiched in right next to number 1 East Court Avenue. You know, it's one of those that, dare I say it, I think we should have had a site visit, because when you look opposite, you've got a different array of properties. This particular house has got a massive back garden. You can see that from the block map, but it's very difficult. And I think perhaps we should have gone on a site visit to just get a view of how 5.3 sits, Martijn. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I drove past it anyway, but we have an expensive photo pack. I mean, which clearly shows, for me, if I look at those ones, it looks dominant. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, okay, maybe, and you know, 1 meter from 4.3 to 5.3 does make a difference for me. Yeah, it's. I can understand the carpool. I can stand why Tarek came to his, you know, your decision. I don't disagree with that part. But for me, the other parts are still significant. And for me, some of those reasons why it was rejected overall is still.
That's why sometimes photo packs are very good, but seeing it in the flesh sometimes is a better way, especially if people haven't got very good spatial awareness.
Thank you. We could actually vote to defer this application and have a site visit. I think it's particularly important, not because we have got the photo pack, but it's the elevation. I think once you're on the ground and you're looking at it from up the hill, down the hill, whatever, but I'd take advice on as to whether we have got time to defer it and do a site visit because of the 8-week rule.
I think that may be a question for Brian, but the applicant probably would need to agree to an extension of time because it would be beyond the agreed 8-week deadline.
Yes, so your risk is that you'll the applicant may appeal you for non-determination at that point. You leave yourself wide open. They're not here, so you're not going to be able to get a nod that they won't do that this evening and allow it to come back. So I think if you do defer on that basis, you run that risk. And then obviously you're on the back foot in defending it on an appeal at that stage. It's not so you can't. It's just because the item would still. I'd have to double check the constitution. It'd still come back towards you even if they did appeal, so they could get a steer from you as to what you would have done had it been before you. But you'll be in the lap of the inspector at that stage.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. Just to follow up on that point, yes, those are pertinent points for members to bear in mind if you're considering deferral. Returning to kind of Carol's point about talking about the elevations and the value of a site visit, members will need to be clear that the photo pack in front of you for what is a relatively straightforward proposal to understand. You know, it is an outbuilding in a back garden. It is not a complicated strategic development. The household nature of this application, the information you've been provided, the discussion you've had, and the conclusions you've already reached will be obviously minuted in terms of discussing harm and discussing the height difference. Obviously, the background or the sort of the risk of the backdrop of an appeal for non-determination and the 8-week date is other considerations. I guess there are things to sort of leave you with. There is nothing preventing the committee from deferring for a site visit, but it would need to be for a reason. And the debate upon reconvening after the site visit, will the site visit change or add to the debate which has already occurred for the last sort of 30 minutes?
I'm looking at you, Craig. So if we defer this to a site visit the week before the next planning committee, which is the Friday before the next, which is, I don't know, 4 weeks' time, do you honestly think that they are going to take us for tell me when the 8 weeks is up?
Until the 19th of next week is the deadline.
Okay, so as of the 19th, so they're going to delay the 19th, say 2.5 weeks to when we do a site visit, and then a further week. So say 3 weeks. Are they really going to take us for non-determination in those 3 weeks? Because we've still got another application to look at after this.
Yeah. So I mean, well, yeah. I mean, you've got the 2 applications to deal with. I think my comment would be is I can't answer that because, and I'm not best placed to answer that because I don't have that relationship with the developer. I can't jump into their mind or their thought process. I don't have the statistics as to how often people appeal for non-determination either. I don't know if Brian or Tariq would be able to talk a little bit more about the relationship they have with the developer. I honestly don't know. It depends, if they're sat at home watching this, it will depend how their gut, when they speak to their agent, about how they feel it's going to go. If they feel like potentially the committee might refuse it in any event, they might just kick the appeal process going and have done with it. So, tactically, that would be how I would look at it, but I'm guessing massively at that stage.
The other point, councillors, to bear in mind, and this is quite an important point, is the reasons the applications are in front of you is through enforcement action by the council in order to bring about the submission of planning applications, because the works are predominantly complete, as in they are part retrospect, but as the viewing of the site visit shows you they are already built. And therefore, if the committee were minded to refuse these applications, then obviously the council would need to proceed with enforcement action, and that would naturally bring about an automatic appeal. And because we don't get many applicants that don't appeal an enforcement notice straight away, that permission should have been granted in the first instance. So the backdrop to this is not a proposal, it is already in effect built, and therefore the decision of the council comes after our enforcement team has already brought about the submission of an application for your assessment. So again, the purpose of a site visit, the risk of appeal, the debate up to this point, the observations made by councillors, and the backdrop of a refusal resulting in almost a certain enforcement appeal, because otherwise it would have to be demolished to a certain size and height in accordance with the approved development if they wish to do so.
I think for me personally, I think the photos are clear, and my driving through that site visit will not really alter things. I think I still have issues, as I said, with the size and the part. Yeah, I recognize that the carpool has taken away part of that one, but for me, some of the reasons that it is still dominant overly, you know, I'm still struggling with that one. I don't know if others are, the committees are.
I know you went and had a look at it, Martine. I didn't. So, so for me, I'm still in the area of deferment, but for a site visit.
What are other members thinking?
I propose a site visit, but I've taken on board what's being said about what may happen with the applicant if it's taking time, it's going over the limit. I mean, I think it has been in the past that we could have a site visit and it could come back, it could be delegated powers to chairman, whatever. So that's an option, but I think it's a bit dangerous to defer it for a site visit in retrospect. Say most of us know the site well enough. The photographs are there, so I think I would vote against the site visit.
Stuart, Sam, any thoughts?
Need a second over the site visit.
So you're voting against it, are you? Just trying to clarify what Carol said, sorry. I mean, can I just come back on that? And I'm going to build on what Brian said. So if we're going for a refusal tonight, then we're bringing back into, the reason it's here is because of enforcement. Wouldn't it have been better to defer it and go on the site visit first? Well, I don't know. I mean, we are down 3 people. 4? 1, 2, 5. 4.
At least two of them are also in the same position as Moses.
Oh, are they? Right. So we're down 4 people tonight.
Yeah, but only one of them
3 people.
can actually take part in the discussions because 2 of them are in the same position as Moses and will not be able to take part in the discussions for the same reasons Moses couldn't take part in those.
If it assists councillors, just in context of the planning committee, sort of the nature of developments that come to planning committee and the nature of deferrals in the past, the information in front of you is fairly comprehensive, and any kind of proposal to defer for a site visit really does need to specify what it is that you would not or have not been provided from not just the site photographs, but also the comparison elevations within the officer report, the plans at the end of the officer report, the presentation and the photo pack. And as Martine says, the photo pack does show the proposal outside of the boundaries up the street. It is built, so therefore you can see exactly on that photograph what the roof form looks like. And on Street View, possibly. I don't know how up-to-date Street View is, but that is slightly different from what you are presented normally, which is photos of an undeveloped site, which you have to imagine and cross-reference the proposed plans to those photographs. In this case, you do not need to. It is provided there for you. And as sort of looking back at previous deferrals, they have been generally for larger sites in which a specific part of the site or relationship has been identified that has formed the focus of the debate. And I'll leave members to decide whether that applies here.
Mr. Chairman, we've got a proposal from Wayne for a site visit. There needs to be a seconder if we vote on that, or what's the feeling?
Yeah, I mean, building on something you said earlier, Carol, and that is that if we had a site visit, we could delegate that decision from the site visit to make the decision in the time frame, without having to wait till the next planning committee, to you two, Chairman and Vice Chair. Can you do that?
I would have to. You'd have to give me a significant period of time to trawl through the constitution. But my usual understanding is delegations are to, outside of your executive provisions, are to either committees or officers. You can't delegate to individual councillors, as a general rule.
That's correct, Craig. That's my understanding as well. And without researching, it would either need to be officers or the committee.
So you could do it in consultation with. So I see decisions where people go, it's delegated to officers, but they need to have a consultation with councillors. But it can't. It's unheard of, and my gut is telling me the legislation, the Local Government Act says you can't do it. If you want me to go away and take half an hour to triple check, I'm more than happy to. But my understanding is you cannot. You can only delegate outside of that executive provisions. You can only delegate to officers or a committee. So if you were going to go along the suggestion of what Carol had potentially suggested about delegating, you would have your site visit, but you would need to delegate to officers to make that decision. So you'd have to be comfortable that you're happy following that site visit without any further ability to debate it or discuss it. You'd be happy for officers to make that decision. I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure what a site visit would do for you at that stage, to be candid.
Just to add to that, Craig, the site visit and it being delegated to officers would also partly conflict with the original call-in reasons and request, and for the committee to pass back the responsibility to determine an application which has been called in by councillors and accepted by officers, within the requisite time period for hearing at committee, I think would pose probably an unhelpful precedent if it was in fact able to be done, which I personally don't think it can be. But I like Craig, we would need time to look into that because it's not been ever proposed before.
Carol.
Thank you. I'm probably going back too many years, remembering we have done that in the past, but that was back in the 80s when I was on the planning committee. It's very clear that there's a number of us not happy with the proposal that we have in front of us, but we're being told that we've got to look at the additional parts and whether or not they are deemed to be significant. I think in terms of we need to move on, and I just wonder whether if we've had sufficient debate, I would be happy, well, I wouldn't be happy, regrettably, I would propose that we accept the officer recommendation of approval. So I'll just put that out on the table.
.360 on this. 1 minute we're going to refuse, next minute we're going on a site visit, and then we're going to approve it. Your previous point, Carol, was would anybody support my request for a site visit and deferment? We haven't finished that one yet. And if they haven't, then we move on to what you've just said.
So you need a seconder for a proposal for a site visit?
Yes. Do we have a seconder for a proposal for site visit? Stuart, okay. Can we then have a vote for that one? Anybody supporting a site visit as proposed by Wayne?
So, sorry, would you just mind eloquenting the reasons for the site visit, just so we're absolutely clear?
as has been discussed, the very reasons why this application were refused, as were raised by Mr. Marsh, were related to page 37, item 10, item 11, bulk, scale, mass, layout, built form. They're all the things that I think we would benefit of a site visit to go and just have a look, because I haven't been there, but I would like to go and have a look. So that's, you know, the very application has been refused. I appreciate that it's been built, and it's all been built retrospectively, and this is a retrospective application, apart from the carport, but I think it would benefit the committee. That's my personal view.
That's fine, Councillor. It's just the Constitution asks for reasons. That's why I have to ask. So thank you.
Could we have a vote then? Who would support the motion? Okay. Any vote against? No, it doesn't matter anyway, because you guys. So then we'll go for the site visit. Thank you. So, Brian, the committee has voted for a site visit.
Understood. Yep, heard it.
What would be the best way forward? Would it be we waiting for we have probably a planned site visit around the 5th of September, but is that...
So the next planning committee, because this has been deferred from committee for a site visit to be brought back, the next planning committee is on the 10th of September. The committee site visits for any items that would be going that are requested or required would be on Friday the 5th of September. As Tarek has outlined, the determination date is the 19th of August. That obviously officers will update the applicant agent and notify them of the deferral and seek an extension of time to the determination date. There's no guarantee that will be granted. Likewise, the council still have a duty until such time as an appeal for non-determination is received. We have a responsibility to determine the application as swiftly as possible. And so obviously the committee reports in front of you are unlikely to change significantly on the next agenda. Members of, obviously, Wayne, Councillor Smith has outlined the policy, bulk, scale and massing reasons for a site visit. And obviously we will see where we go from there.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, great. We still have the second application. So, Tarek, there's no separate presentation? No, because
no, it's effectively the same thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So could I ask, we have the slide up that shows us the differences. You had it in yellow, red and green or whatever. Yeah, sure. While we're talking, I think it might be useful.
And also, Mr. Marsh, you're down to speak for application 22 as well, and so is Stephen Newton. Can I ask Mr. Marsh to present?
Thank you, Chair. This garage, which was approved under the original application, was a large garage at the limit of acceptability due to the eaves being just above the fence line. It's a 6-foot fence, and they would have been appearing above it. And the height of the pitch roof was at the maximum allowed. And there was a narrow pedestrian door. What was actually built exceeded all the approved limits, including height, length, width, windows, doors. Now, the eaves are now well above the fence instead of discreetly behind behind the fence, which adversely affects the street scene. It actually looks over the top. It's quite dominant now, which you'll see on the site visit, of course. And the roof is now unacceptably tall and prominent. It's a big grey slab. As you go down the road, you can't miss it. The central pedestrian door with side windows lends itself to a residential conversion, which has been spoken about. And then we have also concerned that the main garage door will never be opened and that the garage will be inaccessible to vehicles. This is in common with similar garages in Byron Road and Rosedale Crescent, which have had 2 rows of bricks in front of them preventing access. They've never been used as a garage. They go in. This garage exceeds all the critical limits of height and dominates the locality due to its appearance, height and unsympathetic design and prominence in front of the building line of East Court Avenue, which is one of the things which was picked up on the previous refusal. The last remaining tree on site was removed as part of the works. There's now no soft landscaping visible from Eastern Avenue. The impression is of a stark industrial site in what was otherwise a green residential area. This development negatively impacts the area contrary to policies CP1 and CP3, therefore request refusal. Conditions, proven usability of the garage. We actually like to see a car driven in and out. We've seen some garages constructed with spaced floor and they would never support a vehicle if they were in them. The landscaping condition which has been spoken about to introduce soft landscape but visible from East Court Avenue. It was green all the way along there. It's now desolate. And the non-residential use of the garage, which I think is a condition anyway. So it is a very dominant, massive grey block, and it's very unsightly. You'll see it when you get there, and we recommend refusal for it. It was actually refused, of course, as part of the previous application 250666. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Stephen, Councillor Stephen Newton.
Thank you, Chair. My comments are exactly the same as for the previous application. The applicant has persistently built something in contravention of the planning guidance and the approval given. I feel that this has disrespected the process, council officers and the neighbours. This development was originally rejected individually and cumulatively because the proposed outbuildings were by reason of their excessive scale, height, massing and inappropriate siting forward of the established building line along East Court Avenue result in overly dominant, incongruous and visually intrusive form of development. From many locations along East Court Avenue, the proposed outbuildings would read as one continuous form of development forward of the established building line that would significantly detract from the visual amenity of the character and appearance, pattern of development and spatial qualities of the immediate vicinity, contrary to policies CP1 and CP3 of the core strategy, Section 12 of the National Planning Policy Framework, the National Design Guide and Section 4 of the Borough Design Guide Supplementary Planning Document, and hardly anything has changed with these new applications. It is still overly dominant, incongruous and a visually intrusive form of development. From many locations along East Court Avenue, the proposed outbuildings would read as one continuous form of development forward of the established building line that would significantly detract from the visual amenity of the character and appearance, pattern of development and spatial qualities of the immediate vicinity, contrary to policies CP1 and CP3 of the core strategy, Section 12 of the National Planning Policy Framework, the National Design Guide and Section 4 of the Borough Design Guide Supplementary Planning Document. I therefore ask the committee to reject these new applications, but if the committee is minded to approve these developments, can you please impose the following conditions? The premises in its entirety cannot be used for any type of commercial activity at any time. The premises must not be sold or rented out as separate units. It must remain as a single premises encompassing the main house and outbuildings. The premises in its entirety can only be used by a single family unit and family members staying with them and not be subject to any payment or in-kind arrangements. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Sorry, I just wanted to, okay, maybe you go ahead, Rain.
I think considering the decision we've just made at 22, or I think, well, sorry, 21, I think we should tie all this in on one site visit.
I just want to double clarify with Tarek. The garage was approved as a separate application. And that was, the heights were 4 and the width was 4 by 7. Now the heights are 4.3 and the width is 4.3 versus 7.3. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And to clarify as well, previously it was a storage. So now it's proposed as a garage building, but in the submitted floor plans previously it was a storage building, not a garage, and now it's proposed as a garage.
So for me, there is slightly different one. Yeah, this garage is slightly, it's a little bit bigger than it was before, but not for me in a sufficient way that I have the same concerns as I have for the previous application. So that I just wanted to air that one out.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask a question of Tarek. On page 61.29, it talks about maintaining clear separation between outbuildings and respecting the established building line. I can't see that it does establish, respect the building line in East Court Avenue. There isn't a building line as such for Culver Lane because that would be at the front. So I just wondered how that was arrived at, please.
I would just like to emphasize the fallback position. So that was granted approval previously this year. So the only material changes are the increase in height across all dimensions and the inclusion of 2 windows and a door. So the previous position this sitting was already established. And in accordance with the Borough Design Guide, the garage is to the rear of the house. And there is an opportunity to include some kind of soft landscaping across the side under this application now compared to what was already approved previously.
But we would like, is the consensus to defer this one as part of the same deal as before? I'm looking at Wayne, Stuart, and Sam.
I understand what you're saying. You know, you've got, let me go back to those. So length is increased by 300 millimetres, so it's like 300 millimetres length, width and height. That much. I think it, personally, I think that would be very difficult for any council to defend.
Sam.
Yeah, and I think based on what we've heard today, I think appreciate that. I think the viewpoint on item number 22 was, I think, deferral. I think, and looking at going to the an additional site visit. I think based on what we've heard today, I don't see there's much material difference in the addition and size. I think as Wayne just highlighted. So I think I'd be going for approval for this today, this item.
Sorry, Chairman, I'll second that if that's a proposal from Sam.
So Sam, just to confirm, this is a proposal to support the officer's recommendation. Carol, you second that one? Could we have a vote on that one, everybody? Thank you. So, Derek, that has gone through. Yeah. Thank you. I think that is the last. Brian, is there anything you want to address towards the part of the meeting?
No, just to note the supplementary agenda, the item 2 in the supplementary agenda, just kind of reminding members of the latest state of play with major appeals decisions. They're unchanged. We haven't received since last committee any new major appeal decisions. Members will be aware that we've got a number of appeals ongoing at the moment. Most recently, matters within the Lodge Road, Tape Lane application appeal were likely to be deferred to possibly the end of September, but a date has not been confirmed yet. So whilst the majority of matters will proceed with the public inquiry, which is on this week and next week, it is likely the appeal will reconvene at the end of September to allow additional assessment of information, and therefore any kind of decision timetable on that application is likely to be slightly longer than we would have initially anticipated. So that's the kind of latest from the major appeals front. Thanks.
Yeah, Wayne has a question for you, Brian.
Where was that, Brian? So the
the
appeal
Lodge-
that started. So it started
Lodge Road.
and it's been delayed.
No, it's not been delayed. There's flood risk and drainage matters that require additional information that requires all parties to consider and engage. And so I don't know if the date's confirmed, but I suspect that it will be a little way after the actual public inquiry is due to conclude.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you, Brian. Then
No problem.
we close the meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you.